People of Hope. As I read and reread the story of the Valley of Dry Bones, I realized how many times the words breath and spirit are used. These two words are used 10 times throughout the passage. The Hebrew word for breath and spirit is ruach. Ruach can also be wind. In Genesis 1:2, ruach is the wind from God. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. During chaos, we find God's divine spirit at work. God is creating. Then after the flood, God remembers Noah. God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. God's wind initiates the reversal of that watery chaos, and creation begins again. In our story from the prophet Ezekiel, the Israelites are promised that their exile in Babylon is not the end of the story. God has other plans. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. God is going to regenerate the nation. God will recreate. God hasn't forgotten the people despite their plight. The people say, but our bones are dried up and our hope is lost. And God says, no. God is their hope. In Psalm 130, the psalmist tells us to hope in the Lord. These and other stories and verses throughout the Bible provide hope, not only for the Israelite people, but they provide hope for us today, even in the middle of the chaos of COVID-19. God's wind continues to blow, transforming chaos and recreating. God's ruach provides hope. God's ruach provides hope. Like the psalmist, we are called to be a people of hope. You might question me at this point. How are we supposed to be a people of hope amid such uncertainty? Some of you might be questioning, where is God in all this mess? And others may be upset and ask, how could a loving God allow this to happen? Some of you might just be mad that your personal liberties have been curtailed. I am sure that if you're honest with yourself, as I must be with myself, there are a lot of different feelings and questions in your mind. I have feelings of fear, uncertainty, and anger. And in my case, my fear is whether I will be able to manage the anxiety in my own household. You may have these and other emotions welling up, as each one's circumstances are slightly different. I am sure it wasn't any different for the Israelites in exile in a foreign country. Everything that made them a people and a nation had been stripped from them, including their personal liberties. The one thing that couldn't be taken away was their God. I used to tell my students that they carried an instrument with them that couldn't be taken away, that of their voice. In the same way, God was still with this people, even in a foreign country. Ezekiel was reassuring the people that God would bring them through the chaos. The people were in the process of being transformed, and so are we. God's ruach continues to blow. As I write, one of my teachers sent a link to a Brené Brown podcast. I listened to it and I share some of what Brené said because it fits with the story today. If you choose to go to her website and listen to the podcast yourself, let me warn you ahead of time that Brené doesn't always hold back with her language. Still, her message is good. Brené is all about vulnerability. She has written several books. We had to read another book of hers called Dare to Lead last fall. In the book, she says that you cannot be courageous without being vulnerable. Brené explains that our society is afraid of vulnerability because it is scary. But she also says that without being vulnerable, we stop growing, and then we stop living. Normalizing discomfort is what actually gives us courage. Her podcast is all about the terrible first times. Well, COVID-19 is a collective, terrible first time. Nothing is normal about it. We are vulnerable and we don't like it. How then do we grow through this? Well, Brené suggests that we grow as we push through the experience. We have learned that we aren't good at social distancing, and many of us prefer not to do it. But that doesn't mean that we aren't learning how to do it and still maintain contact. I saw many interesting ways that people were using the internet to create community while still social distancing. Your own church is practicing prayer times each day in small groups. Brené says that there is nothing normal about COVID-19. We don't know how to social distance, but we get better at it day by day. I laughed because she said that after parents had had their children home for one day, they decided that teachers should be paid $1 billion a day. She also said that this is all new and we don't know what we're doing. Because of this, it's important to name what we are feeling. We need to name our uncertainties. We need to be patient with ourselves and with others. The second thing that we need to do is to put COVID-19 in perspective and to realize that whatever we're dealing with, it won't be forever. This provides hope. In the children's sermon, I asked, what is hope? And I showed a picture of some seeds. A planter plants in anticipation of an expected outcome, a flower or a vegetable or plant of some sort. Then I suggested that stories provide hope. It doesn't matter whether these stories are family stories of success after a struggle of some sort, or a story from the Bible like the dry bones being brought back to life, or a story from a storybook where the main characters succeed in overcoming evil. I think of the Harry Potter, the Percy Jackson series, where the main theme is good overcoming evil and not giving up even when the odds seem to be against us. Brené explains that children lack the perspective that things won't be forever. Stories help children to be able to see that there is hope for the future. She does warn us to be careful not to negate their feelings. Have them name all the feelings that they have. I also suggest that transformation happens when we consider infinite possibilities rather than our perceived limitations. God is at work even in the middle of COVID-19. People once questioned whether anything good could come out of Nazareth, and the answer, though they didn't know it, was yes. Jesus grew up in Nazareth. Can anything good come out of our experience of COVID-19? We need to put COVID-19 in perspective, and when we look back 5 or more months from now, ask, how has this experience changed us, not only as a society, but as God's people? This keeps us growing. God's ruach is at work even now. Brené also suggests that we need to do a reality check. Reality checks have to do with our expectations and the expectations of others. Brené suggests that we listen to others with the same passion as we ourselves want to be heard. Also, we need to ask for what we need, whether physical, psychological, or emotional. We need to make sure that others are doing the same thing. It is scary when we're vulnerable, and COVID-19 has made us all feel vulnerable in one way or another. Brené warns that in times like these, there will be experts who pop up trying to gain our trust by peddling certainty to us. Don't believe them. Do a reality check. We need to have those hard conversations. This leads to growth, and growth is life. God's ruach is at work, and this gives us hope. I leave you with a story that was shared by John and Elaine Weiss. John tells of Amity, who was ordained as an elder of the church at age 15. She began her human rights activism at age 9, and when she and Hannah Kohat started the church's response to the Bosnian genocide, And then in 2001, 6 years after the end of that genocide, she began 2 years of study for the IB at the United World College of the Adriatic in Duino, Italy. There, along with other students from the college, she worked with Bosnian refugees who remained in a camp in Slovenia. When she found the residents of the camp suffering from head lice, she managed to smuggle in some anti-lice ointment, defeating the attempt by the Slovenian authorities to support or suppress the news that they had been allowed head lice to spread there. In the summer of 2002, she visited Bosnia, accompanied by a Bosnian fellow student touring Sarajevo, and she writes the following: "The hopelessness in the faces of the people of Sarajevo will stay with me forever. Growing hope requires dealing with every problem in the world of the refugee. But although the Slovene government provided food, shelter, and safety, they ignored the disease of hopelessness. By refusing the refugees jobs, citizenship, and health care, they fed the bodies while leaving the soul to rot." End quote. Amity goes on to say that combating hopelessness means offering a soil of chances in which hope can grow. Isn't this exactly what God did during creation and again in the story of Noah? Isn't this what God provided for the people in Babylonian exile with a story of dead bones coming to life again? Isn't this what God offers us even now in the middle of COVID-19? God provides hope by offering a soil of chances in which hope can grow. What a beautiful thought. We are a people of hope. And because our trust and our confidence is in God alone, we look for the soil of chances around us. We allow God's creative wind, the ruach, to transform our thoughts and actions into creative ideas that will stretch long into the future beyond COVID-19, and in which our souls will be nourished rather than left to rot. We are a people of hope.